Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Above the Bar podcast, where each week we belly up to the bar with a new guest, find out what they do, who they are, and what makes them great. So sit back, relax, and enjoy. Alrighty, folks, welcome back to the Above the Bar podcast. It's your host, Sean. We've bellied up to the bar here on this Wednesday, about midway, just before Memorial Day here. And we have sat down with, again, and I've said it a couple of times, I'll say it again. Maybe I can do it. And ladies and gentlemen, coming to the ring, the man with the most unique name. We know what his parents were very into. Weighing in at a whopping who knows and from who knows where. Well, I do. It's from Rotterdam. So joining us, it's Mr. Nicholas Cassius Clay. Yeah. All right, Nicholas.
Hi, Sean. Thanks for having me.
How are you? And he's joining us all the way from not quite Rut Vegas. That's Rotterdam. Is Rut Vegas. That's what we always call Rotterdam, Vermont, Rut Vegas, or Rutland, Vermont, Rut Vegas. So, how are you today, sir?
I'm doing well.
Well, we're going to be talking. Nicholas is a life and mindfulness coach. Part of his website. He's got his website out there. It's ticking away here. It's known as beingoneworld.com. We're going to be talking about, are you healing or are you coping with whatever issues you have? He's going to give us some ideas on what we can do about that, how we can move through it, and how to contact him if you want to get more into that. But before we get into all those things, goodness gracious, got a little belches here. Before we get into all those kind of things, over my right shoulder, as always, folks, is the big board for Sticker and a Cause. If you have something you're supporting, something you believe in, something you want other people to know about, you can reach out to me on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, Instagram, X. Our website is theabovethebarpodcast.com. Our email address is theabovethebarpodcast@gmail.com. You can reach out, ask me any kind of questions you've got. We'll tell you how to get in contact with me. And you send me that stuff out, and people will know all about you, and we'll read about you live on the air. All right, so that part's done. Then let's talk about our sponsors. That's Budget Blinds of East Greenbush, Hudson and Cooksaki, and Schoharie, North America's largest custom window treatment company. They focus on everything from blinds, shades, shutters, drapery, window tinting, you name it, they can do it. They handle all different types. You reach out to them. They'll get you set up with a free consultation, tell you what would look best in your home. Biggest thing, folks, that compared to all these other vendors that are out there, like your big box stores, is they actually bring the product to your home, show it to you in your home, let you see it, let you understand it, let you feel the material, not just, well, hopefully it'll look good and hopefully you've got the paint and the swatch or whatever it is that you need for it. They're actually going to take good care of you. And as always, they've always got something going on. This month, it's 20% off your window treatments. Take another 5% off of any motorization. And as always, if you tell them you're there to belly up to the bar, they're going to give you another 5% off your entire order. So that's Budget Blinds of East Greenbush, Budget Blinds of Hudson and Cooksaki, and Budget Blinds of Schoharie. All right, Nicholas, it's all done.
All right.
And you actually know how to say the names of all those places, don't you? Cooksaki, Schoharie, and all that.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I'm familiar with them.
You're familiar with them. It's like when I'm in PA and I see the Schuylkill River. I know how to say it. Have you ever seen the word Schuylkill?
No.
It's like Schuyler, something like that. It's like it looks nothing like it's supposed to. The Schuylkill River.
That's an interesting spelling.
Yeah, it's absolutely one of those ones that you'd be like, I have no idea what this is.
Where are you located? I thought you were in the area.
I am. I'm outside of Troy.
Oh, okay. I mean, you make it seem like we're different states here.
No, we're both in the same state of confusion and cold.
Gotcha.
We're both right here. I was just telling someone recently. I jumped on my phone, and I don't know why I even looked it up. I was looking at the weather, and I was like, it's 95 degrees in Orlando. I'm like, I would love for 95 degrees right now. That would be so nice. But no, we have this. So as we get completely sidetracked already. So let me make sure I got this right. So you're a life coach, mindfulness coach, uh, and make sure I got this, neurosciences, energy healing, and what is modality?
Modalities, different practices.
Okay, so you kind of combine them all into what you call being one world. And if people want to know about it, they go to beingoneworld.com, correct?
Yes.
So I got to ask before we even get into this, like, was this always like, hey, this is where I'm going to be? I'm going to be the mindful alchemist, and combine all these things together to see what works. Like, is that where you started your career path off?
Not even close. I never would have saw myself here.
So where'd you start off at?
Well, a lot of jobs throughout the years, and where I thought was going to be the career, the last job was delivering packages. I was driving for a trucking company. I was there for 13 years.
Oh, wow.
And I thought that was going to be it. You know, I had the benefits, the pension, the whole thing that people say is a quote unquote good job.
Right.
So yeah, that was my last job with a paycheck. And then it's been 8 years since I left.
So now that's interesting, especially, with the background you're talking about. What had you leave the world of trucking to go off to do this? I mean, this is a pretty big departure. Most people don't think of truckers or delivery guys, if it was a UPS or anything like that, as a guy who's all of a sudden going to be like centering his chi in Zen moments.
Yeah, and if you'd have knew me before, you definitely wouldn't have seen that. So the transition came in finance, actually. So I went through that, got my financial licensing, and that's where I got introduced to self-development.
Okay.
And I got really hooked on that. Through self-development and networking, I got recommended a book, A New Earth by Eckhart Tolle, which is still today one of my top recommended books. And that opened up the door to self-development, inner work, healing. And I had no clue how far the trail or the rabbit hole was going to go. I just kept going the next step. And then after a while, you get pot committed. And it's like, well, I've gone this far. I can't really turn around now. And I just kept going with it.
Now tell me a little bit about that author. I don't know that one.
Yeah, Eckhart Tolle is big in the mindfulness space. He talks a lot about ego awareness. It's where I learned meditation. To
Okay.
give you an idea of how ignorant I was going into it, when I learned meditation, and like big things now are like guided meditations, body scans, I didn't know anything about that. The only thing I thought existed was this one meditation I read in this one book, and I thought this was like the only book in the section of the library before I found out there's all these other people that advocate and teach this stuff.
Was that the same book that just told you to go humana 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 humana? Like that was meditation?
Well, there was no mantras, anything. And it's probably one of the hardest ways to meditate is I just learned to follow my breath and to be with my breath and silence the mind. And I started with a couple minutes, maybe 5 minutes at most. Long story short, my longest meditation to date, I've done 3 hours.
Well, I couldn't, hold on, pause for a second. Like, I can't sit still for 3 hours unless I'm sleeping. Even movies anymore. I'm like, how do you sit and just focus on your breath for 3 hours? I know we're already like way deep into some other stuff that we probably are skipping some here, but that's wild.
Yeah, well, it's progress. It's like going to the gym. How do you one day lift 395 or these 3-4 plate marks? Well, you start, when I first went to the gym, I started with 25s on the ends. You start somewheres and you gradually build. So it went from 5 to 15, and I looked at it like athletics. So I wanted to keep building myself.
Okay.
I looked at it like a mental fitness. And so then I just got to 30 minutes, an hour, and then I started looking into what monks do, and I compared my ability to monks. I've always had this thing of comparing up, like looking at,
Smart.
Follow the bunny rabbit. Who's going to get me to stretch? And I don't know. I just wanted to do 3 hours one time. And you get into a mode, though. The thing with it's interesting. It's like running. If you've ever ran any amount of distance, well,
a little bit.
This is what happens if you can break through a certain threshold, and I'm sure it's different for everyone. You get what's called a runner's high. And all of a sudden you turn to Forrest Gump and you can just keep, like, you just have this.
It just goes.
Yeah. And meditations like that, only in a less adrenaline way, is you just get into this mode and you're there. And it's like floating in the lazy river. And the thing with time is it's conceptual. I mean, in reality, it's always now. So once you can get past the concept of time, an hour can seem like a few minutes.
It is interesting when I've heard that before with the timepiece. So I'm going to stay with this 3 hours for a minute. I'm sorry. We'll get into the other stuff in a minute, but this is just fascinating me. So when you're in that space for 3 hours, you hear like, "Oh, I was in touch with the ancestors," or "I felt myself above my body and had an outer body experience." Like what transpires for somebody when they're in that type of a space, in that mental space?
Yeah, it's interesting. I wouldn't say any of that, at least from my experience. It's as odd as this may sound, just nothing. You're just in a peaceful state of it's almost like time's frozen, and you're teleporting into the future, so to speak. And you just when the timer goes off, like I would always set timers just so I didn't get carried away or miss anything because you can't tell how much time's gone by. It goes off and it's just like, oh, I'm done already. It's you can look at it this way. If you're engaged in anything, maybe take
Right.
a smaller block. If you're watching sports or something, or if you're playing something or playing a game, you may be surprised on how fast time goes because you're so engaged. So it's similar to that,
Okay.
only having engagement of single point focus of of nothing. So you're looping. You're essentially becoming aware of your own awareness, and that loop sustains itself.
So at no point in time did the people from the other side of the veil pierce through and be like, "Nicholas, we're here to take you with us." Nothing
No,
like that. Nothing like that
no.
for you. Okay.
No, not for me, and I can go a step further. I've done, not 3, I've done up to 2 hours in a sensory deprivation tank, though, and that was actually more, challenging than sitting outside in the world.
Tell our listeners what's a sensory deprivation tank.
Yeah, it's also known as a float tank. So you go in essentially like this vault, and it's designed to eliminate all your senses. So there's no fragrances, there's no smell. The salt concentration of the water makes it so you're buoyant. And there's this sea somewheres near
The
the
Dead
side of
Sea.
the world. Yeah,
The
that's like
Dead Sea.
that too. So you have that. The water temperature is meant to acclimate to your body temperature, so you don't feel the water.
Right.
You optional to turn the light off because for some people that's a bit much. So there's no sight, there's no sounds, there's all your senses are eliminated. And the closest I can describe it, at least for me, was like you're just at that point a floating brain. And that is when you're truly just with yourself.
I don't know if I mean that's interesting. I don't know if I could do that. Look, for those of you that are out there watching, listening right now, if you have questions for Nicholas, you want to know about some meditation processes, some self healing processes. Maybe you've done some, and you have some questions. Let us know. Make sure you're hitting that like, share, and follow. Also, especially if you're on and whatever social media platform you're on. That's how this thing grows and changes, and that's how the algorithm hands it off to other people. So you get into this. So you're into the mindfulness. I'm a big Brendan Bouchard fan
Mm,
personally. I,
yeah.
I like I like his style. Very. I'm not sure about this other person that you like, but Brendan's very shut up and go do it. Stop being. You know what? Your feelings are just that. They're feelings. They don't dictate the world. They're just yours. That kind of mindfulness, and I like that personally.
Yeah.
Um, so what gets you though? I mean, because as I'm looking here, I mean, say it, Reiki. Is that how you pronounce it?
Reiki.
Reiki. See, I knew I was gonna mess it up. Uh, so Reiki, NLP, coaching, growth mindset, meditation. What gets you like? Because that's a lot of different elements to bring together to this. I know you said what got you on the path, but how come you kept jumping? You weren't like these folks that are just like, "Bloop, this is what I'm doing."
Yeah, because I was seeking a deeper truth, and I
Okay.
wasn't looking for the quote unquote right answer, and so I just became curious on how much we as humans know about ourselves, and so I just became interested in how wide of an angle I could see, and then I started noticing an overlap, and so I was looking for this fundamental core of like how do we actually work.
What'd you find?
Well, I found that our biggest disagreement is on how we interpret the truth, not so much the truth itself.
What do you mean?
Yeah. So as another mindfulness teacher has said, John Kabat-Zinn, many doors, one room. Since the beginning of time, we've been, having these philosophies about the truth, and there's different faiths and practices and religions. And as I started looking more and more about what this wide variety of people have said, which in comparison to everyone, is probably quite narrow that I've been able to read about. It seemed like there was this reoccurring theme. Like we were all saying the same thing. It's the interpretation that starts to divide us. And that's where the name Being One World came from. It was the thought of, if we actually had an agreement of how to live, we would be one world. And so my coaching is focused on these fundamental principles of self that go below all the interpretations of our identity that we construct.
Okay. So now, how long have you actually been doing the full-blown coaching, that this has been just you?
Yeah, coaching for 5 years now.
So no more finance, no more trucking, just coaching.
Correct. Yeah, coaching is the main. I will say this because people always will say something if I don't mention it when they find out. So on the side for 13 years, and I probably will always do, it's just a love of mine, is I DJ on the side as well. So that music's always been a thing in the background. I still do it on the side. I mean, I don't promote it yet. I always look at every party as an audition, and people every year ask me to do stuff. So that's kind of like the deeper, like where it all started from, which is just interesting because the system that I'm developing now comes all the way back to music. And so I've devised this pretty in-depth self-assessment tool that's based around a music equalizer, only I call it the human EQ. So something I just put together.
Tell me more about that. That's very interesting.
Mm-hmm. So a music equalizer, you adjust the different levels to get the perfect pitch, the harmony. And if you're really into music or systems, it certainly makes a difference.
Oh, yeah.
And then I thought, well, why don't I bring that into the human system? Because it's so hard to draw all these things out linearly. It's all happening simultaneously. And so the first concept came from an atom, where there's electrons circling all simultaneously. So it's the atom process that I use, which stands for awareness, transformation, oneness, and mastery. So the awareness part is the assessment. And so it goes through 13 different areas, like we'll say for a couple examples, like self-talk, communication, relationships, self-esteem. And so there's a metric 1 to 12. 1 represents completely disconnected from self, shame, just at the lowest level you would be. Just no one's going to feel good at that level. And 12 represents being in harmony with self, a state of enlightenment, having complete love and acceptance for self. And so there's a span 1 to 12. And so you self-assess where you are. And then at the end of the assessment, there's a final EQ board that's blank that you then draw in all your sections together.
Oh,
yeah, so you can see in one image where your levels are at. And so now we can start working one at a time. So over time, you're going to work on these levels to create harmony within your system.
Now, it's interesting that you bring up when you were mentioning the 12, and I'm going to tell you, you should only go to 11. It goes to 11.
Well, I'm 13 with the volume knob.
But that's it. So I recently saw something, and you might know the right term for it. They're almost like mindful influencers, like on social media, where they're like super very into my zen. I know myself. They feel like they make it sound like they're super into all this, but it's almost to the point that they feel like they've turned the dial all the way around to the other side. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Have you seen some of these?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I get what you're saying.
Have you seen that before yourself, where somebody's like, it's almost like you're too, what it reminds me of, I was thinking about like the teacher in Happy Gilmore, the kindergarten teacher, where she's like, everyone needs to go to take a nap now so Mrs. Jones can have her time. And she's like just putting the pain on her face. And she's like, I'm so done.
Yeah, and that's where I want to be the bridge in this work, because for a long time, this is what happens. You get spiritual, and it gets intoxicating. And, I wanted to be the person that can work with these, kind of spiritual aspects, energy aspects, ancient roots and all that, and then bring it where people can still feel like they can be themselves in day-to-day society or first world. You go through a period, though. There is a time where you get deeply in touch, and it's this new discovery, and it's about also being aware of your environment, where you're at, and going through the process. There's more to it. And that's where the ego and learning about how that works comes into play as well, and how clever it is.
It's just very interesting to me. So, as you're developing these things and you're putting this all together, when did you actually realize like this is a program? I can put all this, all these pieces together and make this into a career path. And it's an entrepreneurial move to take this to a career path. When does that come about?
Yeah.
Oh, and Fiona says float tanks are awesome.
Yeah. Oh, cool. Yeah. When that came about is, so I was getting to the kind of higher on self-development. I was taking these courses in New York City, driving back and forth between here and there, right in Manhattan. And so here I am now in this structure of about 120 people. And I saw the business. And it was the first time where I saw like, oh, there's a business for this. There's people that seek out these higher levels of self-development, personal development, and for various reasons. I was always looking through a lens of healing, though. So my how I took their tools and how I saw everything that I come across is, how can it resolve the things within me that are left kind of out of balance. And then I saw people leaving the meeting. So and these were intense. We're talking even the starter program is 3 days. It started at 9 a.m. and it ended at I think 9 or 10 p.m. So you get breaks in between.
Damn.
So yeah, and yeah. So, and when I say I had seen people leaving, that's what I mean, like during break times. Then I saw they weren't getting it. And I found myself helping to support people to understand the information. And that's when I saw, one, the ability to comprehend things fast, because we were all learning at the same time. I had never seen this technology before. And two, I saw, what entrepreneurs see. You see that problem, that hole. I didn't think it was okay that people were leaving breaks or just not understanding. And their philosophy was, well, people will get what they're meant to get. And I didn't agree with that. So I thought to myself, well, if I can do one-to-one coaching, I can ensure that people are comprehending it, because I can meet them where they're at and then guide them to the understanding, because it's quite valuable tools. I mean, it's a huge difference between knowing how to use a hammer and not. It's like, you're not going to build a house just by putting a hammer in your hand. You need someone to help you understand how to do it if you want to construct something.
No, that's interesting, and I kind of I see again going back to that, and I ain't got another way of saying it, that hippy dippy kind of like, they will get it when they're ready to get it. The universe will hand it to them. What's up, Aaron Michael? That whole kind of mindset compared to the idea of, no, we gotta. Sometimes you got to keep them on the path. You can't just hand somebody a pole and tell them to fish. You got to teach them what they're actually doing with it. That's interesting. So now I ask all entrepreneurs this question. I think this is probably the toughest thing most of us deal with when we become entrepreneurs, and we need other people to kind of buy into it. Finance, you left 13 years in trucking. Now you're 3 years into finance, and here you are again. You're going to reach out to whoever's around you and say, hey, by the way, I'm leaving all that and I'm going to teach people how to be better selves. What was that conversation like?
Well, in the nature of what I was reading and studying, it was more following an intuitive aspect and having faith. And, I looked at it this way. I thought, what's my worst case scenario? And I'm developed more than I've ever been. I never thought I would have this type of skills and this experience with coaching and teaching people. And so worst case scenario, if it all failed, I would be back where I left anyways. I'd have to go find another job. And I thought, if that's all that ever happened, at least I wouldn't get to a point in my life where I'd have regret, or this thing that was left on, like, oh, if I only could have. I didn't want the if I could have, should have, would have. I was like, let me just do it. And before I started this journey, which I realize now, I learned a lot of things as I learned about what healthy is, and then seeing myself prior. I was a bit of a adrenaline / dopamine addict. So
what do you mean? What do you mean?
Well, I I like to do things to the extreme, whether it was, on my motorcycle, whether it's on a snowboard. Like there's not an engine I've ever driven that I haven't topped out. Or, on the snowboard, it wasn't about just going. I had to be good quick, because I don't like being new at things. And then it was, how fast can I go? And so within a year, I picked it up. And then after that, I got an app to track myself. And to date, I've gone, lower 50s, like 54 miles per hour is my fastest on a snowboard going down a mountain.
That's
So,
crazy.
yeah. So like
That's crazy.
or if I remember, give me a jet ski, I'm going to top it out in the water. Like
So interesting. So this is an interesting question from Fiona. She says, how does your viewpoint differ from a military viewpoint, the regiment compared to the spiritual? I think, and Fiona, correct me if I'm wrong here. You're asking in your process, is this, is it more regiment to get yourself to where you need to be, or is it that more natural spiritual flow, but guiding that spiritual flow? How do those two differ?
Yeah, I would say that there's much more flexibility with my approach for people. Like I said, I used to say a lot in the beginning of my coaching is I'll take you as far as you want to go. So you don't I wouldn't even recommend going too far because it gets challenging to integrate back and live day to day once you get detached and you do get to those places like where monks operate. So I'm here to give people the adjustment that they're looking for so that they can still function and integrate that with day-to-day life, not going to the point where they're going to leave and go on a mountain and give up all their possessions. And, that's like the extreme, the monkhood path. So there's the flexibility there. And military is, it's much more rigid.
And there you go, Fiona. He says that he gives it more of that natural flow than a regimented, like, this is what we're going to do. This is how you get there. That kind of process. That's interesting. Now, but I'm going to piggyback off of her question though, which is, do you still need steps though in this?
Yeah. Again, I use the analogy of strength training. I look at it like working out. Not everyone's going to the gym to get a six pack. Not everyone's going to the gym to lift 315. So you come in with your goals. What is it that you want out of it? How far do you want to go? And that's what I'm here to guide people with, because you can't force it either. It's like, teaching that person how to fish. Well, they have to want to fish first. You can't, this stuff you can't force because it's self-practice. I can't make anyone meditate or take that on. What I can do is strongly encourage it, influence it, and, give examples of where those blocks are that meditation could help with to instill the discipline for them to do it.
But I mean, if they're coming to you and saying, "Hey, Nicholas," and real quick here, folks, if you want to know what Nicholas has got going on, or maybe you're curious about his program, how you can be involved, it's beingoneworld.com. Make sure you're going, check it out. We'll talk about a little more about what's on the website in a moment. Fiona's got another question here real quick. Is there a natural progression you see in some people? Like how do you see people progress? Is there a process that makes you say, okay, there's the next step. You hit that next point. Now we can move on.
Yeah. Actually, one of my newer clients is taking on the information really well. I was actually surprised on when they came back. I can tell by their comprehension. I can tell by their application. So how they share that they're actually using it. And a big indication, this is the best marker, I think, and we all have for healing, is our triggers. And so when those go away, you can tell that those areas have been restored, or it's like the landmines of our mental space. When they get disarmed, then it's been applied properly. So there is this unwavering truth that we all have inside of us. You can't fake the resolve of the work. So I can tell in that regard, the reactivity will start to dial down. You can tell in someone's demeanor, how they connect in the meetings. There's these tells, and some of them are intuitive as well.
That's pretty neat. Real quick here, a gentleman named Matt Moses. So for those that know who my brother is, my brother Justin's blind, and he says, "Hey, I'm helping your brother Justin through Be My Eyes." You have to tell me what that is, Matt. Not sure what that is. He says he's loving the pod and agrees with everything you are saying. That's pretty neat. My brother has, benefited from some of these kind of things going through that process. He wasn't born blind. He lost his sight later in life. So now I don't want to sound like the pessimist. I always want to sound like the optimist. I do believe I'm the guy who walks past everybody smiling, because I used to be the Marine who walked past everyone with the grimace on my face and didn't realize I was doing it. I was just being a Marine. But one of the things I'm curious of, and I actually heard this from a pastor in my church, was he used to always say, be careful of the person who comes in and wants to be involved in everything and knows everything super quick, knows who everybody is. How do you feel with something like coaching like this? Those people that are, like you said, like, oh, they're picking it up, they understand it, they got it. Is it the other side of their personality that this is what they're actually trying to work on, is instead of enjoying and figuring out the moment, they're too busy trying to achieve the moment and complete the moment? Does that make sense what I'm trying to say?
It does. That's a great question because I've experienced that myself as well, and so it's actually great timing as well. If you continue on the path, and what I love about this path and the things you learn is the way the guidelines are and the indicators, they're unwavering, they're fair for everyone. So what ends up happening is life will naturally humble you. And I don't know if there's a skipping of that process, and I don't think there has to be, because those are the deeper aha moments where your ego is fleshed out. There's all it's such a layering process or a spiraling process. So that might be ingrained in the personality. It's important to remember, though, that personalities are mainly developed from survival and protection and defense. So oftentimes people don't know they're doing it, or there's no malice intent. They're just being what they know to be. And this process and the way that I coach and offer people, or anyone that gets into self-development, you're expanding outside of anything you've ever been. So there's going to be some turbulence through the transformation process.
Okay. I get that. And again, folks, if you want to know what Matt's got, or Matt, God, if you want to know what Nicholas has going on, it's being oneworld.com. So how, if somebody's out there and they're like, you know what, this program sounds like something I would be interested in, or a program that I could work with, how does somebody even reach out to you?
Yeah, the best way is through the website. And then right on the top there, the header, it's going to say schedule a discovery session. And so there's no cost to that. So you get 45 minutes just to connect with me and see if it's something that's gonna work for you. And that's really the easiest way to get started. It's just getting to know one another and see what they're here for. And, usually most of the time, there's always room for 10, 15 minutes of making a little movement so they can get the experience of the precision of what I can offer them.
Okay. Now, I mean, now our topic for tonight was, are you healing or are you coping? How can, with your experience doing this for 5 years, uh, understanding what's going on out there, how can you tell from your coaching experience if somebody is in their healing phase, or they've just found ways to just deal with it?
hmm if you're focused on healing, you become much more self-aware. So you stop blaming so much the external, and you start looking within on how you can adjust or change. Another indicator is the triggers. If things are still coming up, then you're more or less masking it as far as opposed to addressing it. So it's like the difference between looking to escape as opposed to looking to confront.
Now, as somebody from the outside in, if I saw someone like, say you and I, and I see you, and and I'm a firm believer in, if you have a bunch of problems and you're the common denominator in every problem, you're probably the problem. But I also come from a world of telling people that. How, but most folks can't deal with it. How can you approach someone and kind of tell them, like, hey, maybe somebody like Nicholas and being oneworld.com might be the place you need to go to, or the folk, like, how do you even approach that?
Yeah, if you were to have someone that well, one of the things you call them out subtly is, do you enjoy feeling that way?
Oh, that's a great question. Like, just so simple.
Yeah.
I mean, I think most people be like, what do you mean? Feeling like what? Like, this isn't my fault. They caused that.
hmm So that's the biggest indicator right there. So you can't control other people, is what I would say to that. So you can only control yourself. So if they caused it, my next question would be is, then why are you continuing to keep yourself in the situation?
That's great. I love it. So, I mean, a lot of this, I mean, I love this approach. I mean, and yours. So now, but again, you have a lot of different elements. What are you taking from some of these elements that that are like, I don't even know what Reiki is. Like,
So
what is
it's energy healing, hands-on healing. So it's understanding the subtle energies and multiple layers of energies around ourselves.
so then how does that work from a coaching standpoint?
Yeah, I don't use that so much in my coaching. The understanding of it helps because it allows me to understand what's possible.
Okay.
So that's a big part of it. I don't personally practice Reiki, and maybe it will come more into the fold. I'm a Reiki 1 practitioner, and my goal is to get my Reiki master. So there's 2 more levels to go. Yeah, if for me, it was more personally, it benefited me, and also knowing what's possible with healing. Like the point of that is meaning that emotions aren't meant to be held on to. It's
That
like yeah, an analogy I use because I've also realized that we struggle with things that can't be seen. This is why like Reiki energy healing oftentimes can be dismissed because we can't see it and it's subtle. So there's 2 analogies I use for that. You can look at subtle energies like small ripples in the pond. So if there's a frog bouncing around in a lake or a duck or something, if you're making so much movement in that body of water, and I ask you if you can feel the ripples from the frog, you're going to have no idea what I'm talking about because your waves are are overpowering that wave. Yet when you stand still, so as meditation teaches us to be here in the present moment, you can start to feel the subtle energies of that. And that's where you pick up on like the energy healing. When you go through a Reiki session, you can feel it within your body. There's also a lot of research now that go beyond just people in the spiritual realm. Scientists that have looked at this to measure the difference of positive thoughts, and we know that there's an energy transference. And one of the easiest ways for every single person to test this, if you want to find out for yourself, is get 2 plants in your house, whether you have them now already or go out and buy 2 plants, and every day look at one and give it positive, loving thoughts. And at the other one, look at it and give it negative thoughts and tell it you hate it and just beat it down. And you will begin to see a difference in the health of each of those plants
really
based on the thoughts you're sending. Thoughts are energy. And so an energy transfers. Now, another way to pick up on this, more practical way. Have you ever been in the room and all of a sudden you just feel the energy shift?
Oh, absolutely. Yes.
Yeah, that's what that is. Though, like, and when you calm the system and you can practice being centered, you can start to feel that more often, and you'll realize that it's everywhere. It's
That's interesting.
everything at the base layer is energy, and then energy essentially metabolizes, so to speak, or it forms matter. Matter is slowed down energy. Essentially, is what I'm saying.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, it also, you're reminding me that idea of positive people have positive people around them and have positive thoughts and stay positive. We used to say it in the Marine Corps all the time. False motivation is still better than no motivation at all. If I'm faking it as hard as I can, eventually I will become it because I've spoken out into the world enough times that it's just going to happen. Which is interesting. So, what are some of the obstacles then that you see for people when it comes to even getting involved in this and saying like, "Hey, I know I need this type of coaching or I need this type of person in my life to make me better." What are some of the obstacles you see for people?
Yeah, they're scared. They're scared to look within. They're scared to address the wounds that are there because for true healing to happen, and that reminds me of my other analogy. It has to be felt. It has to be fully felt, fully processed. And so that's fearful because then you have to go back to the very thing you've been avoiding for X amount of time. Uh, the other analogy I think that works really well, going back to the physical, we do a lot better with than what we can see, is food. We eat food,
Mm.
goes in our body. So it's getting processed. And we know on the other side of it, it comes back out as waste. Well, if you didn't go take a number 2 for about a week, that would be an issue. All
That
right.
would be a problem.
Well, why we think somehow there's something different with energy and with emotions. So what's happening is a lot of people are emotionally backed up. They're emotionally constipated. And so that energy is not being processed. What you lose out, though, is one of the most fascinating aspects, I think, of human development is our wisdom. We gain wisdom through processing those events. Another person that I've learned a bit from is Dr. Joe Dispenza, who says that wisdom is memory void of emotional charge. And so when you
Oh, I
can
like that.
process that, that's the lesson to learn. If you store it, then you stay forever in resentment. And we can go down a whole medical conversation of how that's just bad for the system, builds up stress. Stress is not good for the cells. That raises cortisol levels. And then, these are things that, can end up being cancer or issues down the road. And this is where Eastern medicine comes in, that understands how the organs connect to different areas of the body, different emotions. And this is where acupuncture comes in, and it gets into the whole field of it.
No, that's that. Say that analogy or that phrase one more time. Wisdom is. Say it again.
Wisdom is memory void of emotional charge.
Yeah, you've learned from it. You know what it means, and you can move on from it and use it to better you. That's awesome. Look, folks, if you're out there watching us right now, again, like I said before, make sure you give this a like, share, follow. Oh, look, hi, Lori. I don't know if she's still on there on Instagram. That's my cousin's wife. Oh, nope, she popped off already. That's the only downside to Instagram is like I can say hi on Instagram and there's such like a 20, 30-second delay before anybody knows I'm there. But and real quick here, folks, we are getting close to the end here. I'm going to close the bar up here soon. So it's time for that New Scotland Spirits last call. If you're looking for a spirit that's as bold and rich as New York history, New Scotland Spirits is crafting exceptional, locally sourced whiskey that tells a story with every sip. From grain to glass, we honor tradition while pushing the boundaries of flavor. Whether you're a whiskey connoisseur or just getting started, there's a bottle waiting for you. Raise your glass to true craftsmanship. Find New Scotland Spirits near you or visit newscotlandspirits.com to learn more. New Scotland Spirits, where history and flavor meet. All right, so that part's done. You gotta do the folks that pay the bills.
Yeah, I get that.
It's important. So, well, I thank you, Rita. Rita is my brother's aunt, and she said this is an awesome podcast. So, I'm on your website here real quick and looking it over. So you got services, mindfulness, articles, blogs, courses. Um, book a session. So, I mean, you have it very clearly. Uh, do you think that booking a session that there's a cost associated? And listen, you're not doing this for free. Your name's not Gandhi. You're not or any of those. But do you think that sometimes scares people off from taking these because this is a very Eastern medicine kind of a mindset, and we're all told that no, take this pill, everything will be okay. Why do you think that people are okay to go to the store and buy the pill? Or now here in upstate New York, it feels like there's a dispensary on every other corner, so let's self medicate. Why do you think we're okay with that mindset before the self introspection that says, no, you can have that high by learning about yourself? Why do you think we do that?
Fear of change, and you can take the instant gratification without needing to change anything.
Tell me more.
Yeah, you take that, you never address the root issue. So you don't have to go in, you don't have to do the hard work, you don't have to feel. You have this substance to mitigate that. And we just, it's the path of least resistance. It's also how the brain's wired. It takes conscious effort to grow. The brain by default doesn't care about our quality of life. It cares about survival.
So it's more about this is the easiest path, just do this and we can move on.
Yeah, it's a mentality thing too. It's like we know the challenge, and we know the negative aspects of being unhealthy physically. Why doesn't everyone have a gym membership? Why doesn't everyone do, it's the same kind of thing. It's a certain mentality that wants to grow, that wants to invest more in themselves. And it's like, it's an investment. Most people aren't actually used to investing in themselves either. It's like, how come everybody's not invested in some way, shape, or form in the market? Yeah, it's short-term thinking. they do this with kids. They do the marshmallow test. You can tell what kid has a mentality that is going to understand delayed gratification or most likely to be wealthy by giving a kid a marshmallow and seeing what happens. And the
Tell me, I
kid,
don't know what this is. What is the marshmallow test?
yeah, so you can do this with young kids or really anything. You just give a marshmallow and you see who waits and you see who eats it right away. And then after a period of time, I don't know if there's a standard to it. Say you wait 20 seconds, the kids that wait now get another marshmallow. So they just doubled. So it teaches delayed gratification. And not
Marshmallow
every,
compounded interest.
yeah, and not every kid will wait for the second marshmallow. And so that's it kind of goes back to why would you take the pill first? Well, those are the people that won't wait for the second marshmallow. They don't have delayed gratification, and that's what you need for this. It's not instant.
That's genius, dude. Like I've tried to figure that out myself many times. Like, why don't people take the time to do these things? Why aren't they interested in figuring this out? And I never thought about it. It's not instant. It's not right now. I just need it. It's
Mm-hmm.
the effort. It's the effort versus the result.
Yeah.
Don't mistake the two.
And that gets into a lot of people develop a fixed mindset by default out of the mind protecting itself. And so a fixed mindset thinks of itself already as a finished product. So now the issue with that is if they see that they have to put an effort towards something, that then invalidates their identity, their ego. So it's like, well, if I have to put an effort, then I'm not good enough, or, I'm not smart, or I'm deficient in some way. And so that's the challenge with having a closed mind is now it is confronted by anything new or challenging because it thinks of itself in a limited capacity. So any growth is then threatening because it's saying that, well, I'm not good enough as I am, because it doesn't realize all it could be.
Dude, that's genius. Like, wow. You're opening my eyes to a lot of different ideas and concepts here. How about, have you had anybody, and we're going to tap into your entrepreneurial side of this for a second. Have you had anybody come to you where you're like, I can't help you and I don't want to help you? You don't have to tell me their story if you don't want to, but somebody that you had to be like, I'm not the right person. You actually need psychiatric help, not self-help.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. Well, early on, I would take on anyone because I was a little naive thinking that, this was the magic key and like anyone could benefit. And then I started experiencing those that just had much more deeper things going on. So in a way, yes, I've kind of gotten to a point where I realized like this person isn't taking on the information and I'm not being any benefit to them. It's just, it goes back to, you can't force it. It's just not going to work because I don't think they want it to work.
And Rita says she's 61, no meds. Word on diet, don't take the pill. It affects other things and causes more problems. I had an uncle that was like it. His big thing, dude, we could get in a whole conversation. His big thing was tooth fillings and cancers. And I was like, what are you talking about? He's like, they put a metal cap in your mouth. They put a metal filling in your mouth. You're now, every time you eat, that metal is in there. Parts of it are digesting into your body and being absorbed into your body. You're now taking in a metal that you're not supposed to have. And he was like, I don't know where he got all of his numbers and all that. But yeah, he was all about that. Oh, work on diet. But yeah, he was very and he lived to be in his late 80s before he passed. But he was very into don't. Fillings was like a weird thing for him. He was like, no bueno. So, but that's another question though, is, have you ever, well, not have you ever, but that, pushing people towards the other side of this type of mental health, I guess that's what I'm trying to get to, is where does this fall in the mental health category? Is this more like, I'm stressed at work, I need to get through this, or hey, I had a trauma, I'm trying to get through it. Where does this mental health fall into compared to the person who, hey, you've been diagnosed as clinically depressed and you've got some higher level. I don't even know if higher level is the right term, but where does it differentiate between the person who needs this and needs, more intense?
Yeah, it's a great question and a deeply challenging one to answer. I feel like I would need another 15 more years of experience to answer it.
You have 10 minutes.
Well,
Let's go.
I know, I know. Well, I mean, just experience in doing it, because here's the challenge and why I say that. Because the medical field and the system is taught to analyze, diagnose, put you in the box. And then you need to have that box because that needs to match up with DSM book for the insurance on how to bill out. And it becomes a business thing, not a healing thing. And so then you have those of us on the holistic side, not licensed therapists. I'm not in a licensed field, yet we have these just human ancient techniques and a lot of study that shows a lot of these boxes are not as finite as the field benefits from. So that's kind of answering not fully your
I get
question,
it.
answering a little bit. And that's what I mean. Like if I had another 15 years of experience, I could really get clear on it. Of course, I got to be careful on how I can answer that question. I will say this though, and I'm happy to say this, and there's plenty that backs this. Most people that have, it goes back to the quick fix, goes back to how you can bill out. It takes more work to do the natural way. Most people that quote unquote have anxiety or experiencing an unaddressed worry that happened once upon a time, it started looping in the background. And because they couldn't source it or find it, they continuously get triggered. And then their body starts reacting, which then reloops it back again. And then they have this thing called anxiety. And the challenge with the brain is it's like a computer, it's coded. So the second you tell yourself you have something, then you're going to have it. I mean, this is the whole essence of how the placebo effect works. You can take a fake pill and then all of a sudden you feel better, which is proof that the body and the mind have the capability to heal itself. If the belief and the possibility is there, it also has the same possibility to give itself its own disease if you believe that the disease is there. One of the most fascinating cases of this is phantom pregnancies.
I've heard about that where people are like, their body actually starts to create like their belly bulges, their chemical makeup changes. Yeah, I've heard of that before. Interesting.
Yeah.
And Justin's having little problems sending messages. Texted me, says that he actually, when you're talking about the energy, he can actually feel if somebody puts their hand about an inch above his hand, he can actually feel that energy transferring between the two. He also kind of reiterated what you said. He said, people are who they are, and they will try to go back to what's easiest for them in that sense. Brother, this is fascinating to me because what you're talking about is such a fundamental, like, this takes a different level of work than just popping a pill.
Mm-hmm.
And, when you brought up anxiety, I used to say, oh, I have anxiety. I have these problems. And then I learned that, and this is going to piss somebody off, and I'm okay with it. I'm really good at it. I'm good at pissing people off. You can't have anxiety unless a doctor diagnosed it. Guess what, folks? Unless you've been clinically diagnosed, you can say you have something, but until someone diagnoses it, you don't have it. Mm-hmm. You think you have it. So unless you're actually, and I'm curious in your line, how many people come to you and say, well, I have anxiety, I have imposter syndrome, I have this, I have that. And then come to find out, no one's ever sat down and gone through a clinical process to diagnose this. They just claim to have it. Have you seen a lot of that?
A little bit. I'll say this, that 98% of people that come to me, they're open to the conversation. So they're open to the adjustments.
Okay.
And one of the cases that I love referring to the most is someone that was experiencing anxiety, and we made some adjustments. And when I say that, I mean like panic attacks were a monthly, if not weekly thing. It was there.
Like it was real. Diagnosed real.
I can't remember 100%. I have to look back at notes actually if it was diagnosed. Yeah, the panic attacks were real. It was to the point where those were happening, and so I'm not sure if they. I do have another client that's on medication. I mean, I have people that are.
But do you understand what I'm saying? Like a lot of people want to be like, so I have anxiety. I can't handle this. And then you come to find out you're like, no, you're just having a bad day.
Yeah, I usually don't get those because that's more in the victim mentality. So you want
right there it is. That's what I was looking for. That feels right.
Yeah, you want to have that, even if you're diagnosed. Though, again, it goes back to the medical system. Well, diagnosing, it's also subjective. Like, there's no scan that's going to show it in the brain. And if you say that there's a chemical imbalance, again, the chemical imbalance is secondary to the mindset, to the thought process that creates the chemical imbalance in the first place. The source of everything is energy, is thoughts. And, like, we know if you give someone a hug, it releases serotonin. Well, that's a chemical that got released because of something we did. And so another thing that's important to understand is that 95%, and give or take a percent, of our mind is unconscious. We don't have that much access to the mind that we like to think we do. So when I say things are running in the background, just like a computer, there's a lot of systems running in the background. So you certainly can experience anxiety, and it can all be real, and you can maybe see the chemicals coming through the brain. That still doesn't mean there's not a feedback loop that's just running there. And it's this kind of work, that practicing of awareness, that takes a flashlight into the labyrinth of the mind, and then you can uncover these things that are running, which is what I've done for people. And when you make the unconscious conscious, then you have power of it. And a lot of times that alone will dislodge it. You just didn't know where it's hiding.
See, I love that. It's interesting because it's like saying sometimes people's brain have the what is it, the 404 error. Your computer, like
Yeah.
your brain showing a 404. I get it completely. Well, look, folks, make sure you're out there and you're reaching out and seeing what Nicholas. I love your lad, dude. And let's get this out here. Was mom and dad was it mom or dad that was the big boxing fan?
Yeah, so we don't have the time. That actually came from a pain point. So I changed my middle name. That was part of one of the deeper.
Really?
Yeah, that was part of one of the deeper pains that I had to go through. And so at the time, that was before I started the work. So it was more of a hurtful reaction for me to do.
Wow. Oh, so it was more of like coming after somebody, like I'm going to change my middle name.
Yeah, it was me taking the last piece of myself that is associated to my father and wanting to remove it.
Interesting. That's very. That's a whole nother episode. It sounds like to me.
Yeah.
Like do you and I need a session where we can sit down? My sessions always involve bourbon, though. I'm just going to let you know that now. That's how it. And then at some point, we're like, "Fuck them," and that's what's going to happen at some point. Well, look, folks, if you're enjoying what Nicholas has going on, again, make sure you're checking out beingoneworld.com, seeing what he has happening. Rita's loving all this. Seeing what he has happening. You can set up your session. Look, take the 45 minutes, talk to him, see if it makes sense for you, if he's the right connection for you, and then go from there and see how it works out for you. I can't tell you enough how much that little first step will make a difference in your life, even if it's just the first step to go, this makes sense for me. I should follow up on this more, because there is no help better than self-help. I started it probably almost a year and a half, 2 years ago with Brendan Bouchard, and I love his stuff. And listening to Nicholas, I'm going to take a deeper dive into what he's got going on. But if you're just finding us through Nicholas or Nicholas through us, make sure you join us next Wednesday, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We do this every Wednesday. Great name. Her name is Maiden Manzanal Frank. She's an international leadership speaker, author, and consultant on strategy and change. She supports purpose-driven organizations and executive development strategies, initiatives, and fosters impact leadership and drives systematic changes in Canadian and international affairs. She's got a book. I can't reach it. I forgot I put it on the other side of the room. But she's got a new book out. She's a featured authority in magazines, Medium, Chicago Tribune, all kinds, like more publications than I can even talk to you about. But her book is called The Provocator: Leadership Approach to Address the World's Biggest Problems. We're going to be talking about that book, what she's got going on next week. Again, join us there. Make sure you pick up a copy of her book. That way you can ask tons and tons of questions, and she can be like, oh my gosh, I sold all these copies of my book because I was coming on your show. It could be like, I could be the new Oprah in that way. I'm all about it. I'm just saying. So make sure you're checking her out and seeing that. And as I always say, look, folks, if you're finding me through Nicholas or Nicholas through me, make sure you give that like, share, follow. Find him on social media also at Nicholas Cassius Clay on Doug on LinkedIn. Make sure you're following, seeing what he's got there. He posts some good stuff over there also for you. Now, don't log off on me, Nicholas, after this. We got to talk for just a couple of minutes. But since you have listened to many episodes, you have engulfed yourself in the Above the Bar podcast culture, you know what's coming next, which is the guest always gets the final word. So what is our final word for tonight?
The best place you could ever invest is within yourself.
Alrighty, folks, be sure to push your stool in. This has been a Second Front podcast presentation found on Apple, Spotify, and wherever podcasts can be found.